TikTok, a platform known for its endless stream of dance trends, life hacks, and heartwarming pet videos, which may seem like nothing more than an innocent escape for millions of users, but beneath the surface, the app has also become a breeding ground for something far more unsettling. One such case is John Robert Bell, better known as Joe Rob, a youth pastor, Boy Scout leader, and self-proclaimed TikTok king. Joe Rob isn't just another TikTok creator, he was a titan. With 1.5 million followers, millions of likes, and a reputation for taking on anyone who challenged him, he positioned himself as an outspoken force on the platform. He debated big names, rallied his fan base, and proudly paraded his male feminist identity as if it were a badge of honor. On the surface, he crafted the perfect image, charismatic, wholesome, and deeply involved in guiding young people. He presented himself as a trusted figure, someone dedicated to uplifting and inspiring his audience.
I'll say it again. If you groom somebody, you are disgusting. The scum of the earth.
But behind the carefully curated facade, a darker truth was lurking.
I felt safe around, but I don't feel safe around him anymore because he's a groomer.
I can't go into specific details about what happened between me and Joro because it is quite...
TikTok wasn't just a platform for him to entertain. It was a tool, a means to build trust, gain influence, and operate under a false sense of innocence. His rapid rise to popularity wasn't just about his content. It was about the calculated way he positioned himself as someone who belonged in the lives of young, impressionable viewers. And as his following grew, so did the red flags.
I may be a pastor, or I may work for God, but I'm not against kids having.
To some, he was a feminist hero calling out injustice. To others, he's one of the most revolting hypocrites the app has ever spawned. A predator hiding behind a halo, targeting the very kids who trusted him most. But then the allegations hit. Airbnb schemes, inappropriate photos, and minors as young as 13 caught in his web. What started as whispers quickly turned into a disturbing pattern as victims like Dylan and Coco stepped forward with stories that were impossible to ignore. And the craziest part? Joe Rob's influence wasn't limited to TikTok. He worked with kids in real life, church gigs, Boy Scouts, piano lessons. This wasn't just a case of internet deception. Joe Rob was a predator hiding in plain sight. Today we're pulling back the curtain on Joe Rob, a man who preached morality by day but preyed on minors by night. This isn't just internet drama, it's a wake-up call to every scroller, every parent, and every kid with a phone. Because the real dangers aren't just lurking in dark alleys. They're smiling at you from your For You page, waiting for the right moment to strike. This is a story of manipulation and a downfall so shocking that it'll make you rethink everything you have ever seen online. And is it just me, or does this guy awfully look like Jeffrey Dahmer? Maybe it's just my eyes. Anyways, back to our story. Every villain has an origin story, and Joe Rob is not an exemption. He started in the unassuming glow of TikTok's early pandemic boom, sometime around the middle of 2020. But John Robert Bell wasn't a kid with a ring light. He was a guy in his late 20s with a mission on his mind. He was a guy with an average build, pastor vibes, a smile that screamed "trust me," and a weird charm. He hit the app with a purpose, social justice rants, women's rights takes, and a knack for stitching videos that called out the bad guys. His username, @JoeRobOfficial, although it seems like he's no longer active on TikTok. He had a hook that read, "I'm not like other men," and TikTok ate it all up. At the beginning, Joe was a nobody, just another face in the crowd of faces in the For You page. His early stuff revolved around the basics, Consent 101 lectures for kids, giving sass about male privilege, as well as the occasional safe space spiel for teens. He would duet some random user spouting misogyny, get himself a drop the mic moment, and boom, likes rolled in just like that. But here's the thing that many fail to see. Joe wasn't just loud, he was very calculated. He slowly and steadily curated a brand for himself, a male feminist, a youth pastor with a TikTok twist. And people were all over him. Finally, a guy who gets it, they thought. And by late 2020, he already had over 50,000 followers. That doesn't seem so bad, right? One thing that set Joe apart was his drive to hustle. He didn't just post, he did a lot more to attract people to his content by actively engaging his audience. Furthermore, he did live streams with teens, Q&As, and even Zoom calls with fans. Before you knew it, he already built a community with a cult-like following. He'd say stuff like, "I'm here for the kids without a voice," and you could almost feel the sincerity. Or so they thought. His day job backed it up, as he was a youth pastor, Boy Scouts leader, and piano teacher. On paper, he is Mr. Robert with a Bible. On your screen, he is Jerob. And off-screen? Well, we'll get there. For now, he's climbing 100K, 200K, 500,000 followers by mid-2021. The algorithm loved him and so did the kids. Then came the big break. Summer 2021. Joe picks a fight with TikTok's resident loudmouth. Let's call her the vegan teacher. She's got 2 million followers, 4 times more than Joe Rob's personal count, a shrill voice, and a habit of singing about kale.
Actually, you're not really vegan. You are someone who simply eats plants. We call that a plant-based person. A real vegan is somebody who defends animals all the time and talks about their exploitation.
So one day she posts some wild take differentiating vegans from people who don't eat meat, saying they're plant-based people. She further adds that real vegans are people that don't just avoid eating meat, but also defend animals all the time and talk about their exploitation. And Joe pounces as soon as the video makes it to his feed. He duets her, tearing into her logic. He starts by announcing that he does not have any hate for veganism or plant-based eaters. He then claps back at Vegan Vixen for her definition of veganism, saying that you don't need to be an animal rights activist or actively trying to convert people to veganism to be vegan.
Call that a plant-based person. A real vegan is somebody who defends animals all the time.
No. Before I get started, I'm just going to say I don't have any issues with veganism, whether you're doing it for nutrition reasons, moral reasons, environmental reasons, whatever. As far as I can tell, there is no societal understanding that says that in order to be a vegan, not only do you not have to eat or use animals or animal byproducts, but you also have to be an animal rights activist or actively try to convert people to veganism.
It's a bloodbath. And she claps back, firstly thanking Joe for mansplaining to her and the other female vegan feminists what veganism was. She adds that the Vegan Society definition of veganism encourages them to speak up for the victims. You know, chickens, sheep, cows, and the like, since they can't speak for themselves, or speak at all. She goes on to add that the vegan community also speaks up for the rights of all minorities, including the LGBTQ community, and against all forms of racism. She then gives an invite to thoughts about cows that are being raped, with their male offsprings being killed for meat, and females put back into the cycle to keep producing milk. Now look at who is womansplaining.
Definition of veganism is coming from a carnist like you. Golly gee, that sure means a lot.
Okay, let's talk about it. First of all, me educating my followers about what the actual definition of veganism is not mansplaining to female animal rights activists. And you can use the Vegan Society's definition of veganism to include philosophy, lifestyle activism, all you want. That's your choice. But simply speaking, there's lots of ways to be vegan. And until society in general decides to include those pieces into the definition of veganism, I'm not going to either. And one last thing. You used graphic imagery to describe how I get the milk to put in my coffee, but I don't drink coffee anymore. And when I did, I drank it black. Peace out.
This goes back and forth for weeks. They're at it. Stitches, lives, shade. And the TikTok fans are hooked and can't look away. Vegan's got the numbers, but Joe's got the charm. Comments swing his way, though. One user calls the Vegan Vixen a textbook example for words only mean what I want them to mean. Another user calls her out on her stance on what a vegan is, saying those who defend animals are animal rights activists. She was quickly losing the battle with her audience. After their back and forth, Joe Rob's views skyrocketed. He was getting millions per clip. By the end, Vegan Vixen is still yelling, but Joe is the victor. He had gained a massive audience. His main account hits 1 million followers, doubling in size in a mere 2 weeks. And his alternate account was at 500,000, almost 2 million in total. And his likes, 15 million. In less than a year, he's gone from nobody to TikTok royalty. Fans were calling him the guy who slayed Vixen. He was untouchable, or so we thought. With fame came power. So our guy Joe doubles down. He's doing more rants, more debates. He's calling out creeps, defending the victims, all while rocking that male feminist halo. He goes on, ranting and duetting whoever he disagrees with. Fans eat it up. Fan pages pop up. Edits of his best moments flood the app. He becomes not just a creator, he's a beacon. Young teens DM him for advice. Parents thank him for guiding their troubled kids. By 2022, he's peaking. 1.5 million followers, $1 million in clout. Money, adoration, trust, he's had it all. And any video of people speaking ill against Joe was met with a massive number of dislikes. It was almost like he had started a cult or something of that scale. But here is where things get tricky and where the mask slips for him. People start to notice that Joe is loud on misogyny, but quiet, almost too quiet, on predators. Other creators like him get exposed, guys like Gemini Official. It's revealed that he was luring young girls to Airbnbs for very suspicious activities, and Joe, crickets. His fans noticed this and asked him to speak about it since it was in line with his content, but were probably left in shock when he was dodging this event. An easy excuse for him here would be that he was probably avoiding drama from the whole scenario. But this was not the only time where Joe Rob deflected or dodged his calling out a pedophile as he was famous for. A little while after the Gemini Official scandal, another child groomer is exposed, and this time it's someone really close to Joe. A friend of his, in fact. It was a guy named the Calvin Brandel. After he was caught, he later explained that TikTok inflated his ego and that he felt invincible, thinking that he couldn't make a mistake.
Famous.
I felt that with TikTok, my ego was super inflated, and I felt like I was invincible, I was unstoppable, I couldn't make a mistake.
Again, we see Joe avoid saying anything on the matter, even though this guy was someone that he was friends with publicly. They even had a picture of themselves together posted on Calvin's Instagram. But Joe had no words this time. He was just mute. Now, you could try to make an excuse for Joe. Maybe he was just shocked, caught off guard by the avalanche of allegations against someone he'd once considered a friend. That sounds reasonable, right? Well, maybe, if it weren't for what's coming next. See, Joe was not just avoiding drama, he was hiding something. Something that, if it came to light, would take down his TikTok empire that took him so long and so much to build. But in mid-2023, a kid named Dylan was about to blow the lid right off. By mid-2023, Joe Rob was sitting pretty. 1.5 million followers on TikTok, a halo polished by years of preaching consent and calling out creeps. He was TikTok's golden boy, untouchable. But every empire has got its cracks, and Joe's are about to split wide open. See, while he's dodging predator scandals like Gemini Official, staying silent when the audience screamed for justice, something else was brewing. A kid named Dylan had been waiting, watching, and he's got a story that'll make your skin crawl. This wasn't just a takedown, it was a reckoning. But first, let's rewind. Joe built his brand on busting bad behavior. Gemini Official gets exposed in late 2022. Over a dozen creators accuse him of luring young girls to Airbnbs, promising them content collabs only for him to prey on them. The evidence stacks up. Texts, pics, a hotel confession, and TikTok's big names are on it. He's scum, they say, videos racking up millions. But for some reason, Joe stays silent. Not even a peep. Fans are waiting, expecting him to drop a video condemning those actions, but it never came. Weird, right? The guy who lives for callouts is suddenly mute? Now hold that thought. Dylan's about to explain why. Fast forward to July 2023, a Wednesday, a day that appears uneventful, until Dylan, username @DillG, drops a video that hits like a freight train. He's 16, a small creator with around 30,000 followers, and he's shaking. This is about one of the biggest hypocrites I've ever met, he starts, voice cracking.
Because he's a groomer.
On one unassuming Wednesday, 17-year-old TikToker DillG16 uploaded the following video.
This video will be about one of the biggest hypocrites I have ever met in my life, Joe Rob. John is a disgusting and terrible hypocrite who abuses his platform by using his clout to groom and prey upon underage boys. He has done this to multiple people, including me.
Dylan almost broke the internet with this confession. He says that Joe Robb abuses his platform by using it to groom underage boys. He adds that he was not the only victim of Joe, saying he did it to multiple other people. The app freezes, then explodes. Dylan's got receipts, and they're juicy enough to make your stomach turn. Let's break it down straight from the kid's mouth. Dylan says it starts 9 months back. Joe follows him out of nowhere. When he still had less than 30,000 followers, he was a small fry compared to Joe's millions. He says Joe slides into his live stream all charming, so he could ask him for his Snapchat. Dylan, who is probably starstruck still, hands it over. They start chatting for weeks on end. Innocent stuff, TikTok talk. Then Joe ups the ante. He asks Dylan to book an Airbnb with him for his 18th birthday that was still 3 months away. An Airbnb with a 17-year-old boy, 3 months out. Let that sink in. Dylan is reluctant at first, but asks if he could bring friends. Joe realizes that Dylan was very reluctant and, in turn, agrees to let him bring a friend, hoping that it butters the deal and makes Dylan more acceptable to the idea. He then sends links to one-bedroom spots for just the two of them. We'll have lots of money to do fun things, Joe texts, but there would be a room for the two of us. Dylan pushes back. What about a 2-bedroom? Joe ghosts the question and immediately pivots to talking about the beach and getting a hot tub. It's really giving predatory vibes. Now, Dylan also points out that Joe is actively involved with multiple people at a time. Even when Dylan talks about bringing his friend along to the trip with Joe, he goes on to ask him when his friend was going to turn 18, as we see in their texts below. It actually gets worse. A couple of weeks later on a Zoom call with about 10 other kids, ages ranging from 13 to 17, and Joe has got a game. He tells them to take a BDSM test. Send him their test scores. A 32-year-old asking kids for that? I need a shower just saying that. Dylan reveals that Joe asks them to take the test so he can know what their kinks are. Whoa, what a sick guy.
In one of the Zooms with all of my TikTok friends, John thought it would be a good idea to have us all take a BDSM score test and send him our results. Keep in mind, the youngest was 15 years old and the oldest were 19, and there were only two 19-year-olds and everybody else was 17 and below.
This man asked kids to take a BDSM test. Surely more than a handful of them do not know what that is. And why does he want to see their scores? To know their kinks? From a 14-year-old? Seriously? Thankfully, Dylan's no fool. He smells something off. One time his friends join a Zoom call with Joe and he flips, questioning why Dylan invited them. He snaps and then spins it by leaving Dylan out of the subsequent calls that they had.
A few months later, in the Zooms, my friends would go into separate FaceTime calls and it felt like me and John were always left out, and he tried to convince me that they were talking about me and that they weren't my real friends and that he was my only real.
So now it was Joe and Dylan's friends having separate conversations without Dylan. After that, Joe meets Dylan and tells him the details of the conversation he had with them. He says to him, "They're ditching you, man. I'm your real friend." Gaslighting 101, textbook grooming. He realizes that Dylan's friends were already aware of what was going on. And in an effort to make Dylan question whatever they say to him from then on, he is gaslighting him to think that his friends don't have his back. It works. Dylan drifts from his crew, listening to his new friend, Joe Robb. But his friends keep watching out for Dylan, even though they weren't exactly on speaking terms anymore. They're watching. One day, they finally FaceTime him and tell him that Joe is grooming him. As expected, Dylan rebuffs their claims, telling them that he's cool. But hours pass and he ponders on what his friends just told him, and it eventually clicks for Dylan.
I got a FaceTime call from all of my friends, and I answered, and in those FaceTime calls, during the Zooms, they were talking about how John was grooming me, and whenever they confronted me with this, I was very defensive. A few hours later, I called back and talked to them, and I finally realized that John was grooming me. I decided to cut John off and not confront him about anything. I didn't say anything for the past 8 months because I thought I was the only one until recently I found out that there are multiple people that John has groomed. John does not deserve to have any type of platform because if he does, he will continue this behavior and will not stop preying on teenagers. He's a disgusting...
Joe was really a creep. He immediately cuts him off. Dylan then stays quiet for a few months, thinking he's alone. Then he hears whispers somehow, and he finds out that there are others who got the same treatment. That's when he finally decided to record that confession video. And Dylan's video is a hit, 5 million views in 48 hours. People are commenting and sympathizing with Dylan and calling out Joe for his disgusting actions, especially since Joe posed to the public as an innocent and upright Christian, Boy Scouts and piano teacher. He even helped speak against injustice and called out other people on their shortcomings and wrongdoings. So everyone is surprised that he is actually a groomer behind the scenes. But Dylan's not alone. His video starts a sequence of multiple accounts coming out to tell their stories with Joe too.
I will be livid. It all starts about 7 months ago when he follows me back. I almost instantly messaged him saying, "Hey dude, I'm a big fan. I can't believe you followed me back. Do you think you'd want to play Minecraft sometime?" Because I asked most of my new mutuals if they wanted to play Minecraft because I was addicted to the game at the time. He hit me back nearly instantly with a, "Oh, sure, of course. Here's my Snapchat and here's my Xbox tag." As to which I added both of them because I wanted new people to play Minecraft with and I looked up to him. And here's where things started. That night, me and John played for around 6 hours total on one Minecraft world and got pretty damn far in it. And we both were having a lot of fun. We both stayed up late talking, and we did this for the next week. We stayed up like till 2 to 4 a.m. talking to each other and playing Minecraft, and it was great. I could not have asked for more. And I didn't suspect a thing. I figured we were just friends talking, playing Minecraft together, because that's what friends did. And I'd say around 3 weeks later, he started asking like different questions, like, "What state do you live in? And do your parents let you travel? And do you like to travel? And do I?" And I gave him full honesty. And as to which I do, or I did. And I didn't talk much about it, but I trusted him enough to tell him. So I told him everything. And then he answered, "Great, thanks for telling me." And then stopped talking to me for about...
Coco is next, and they have got a tale that'll twist your guts. Going by the username @CocoCreates, they are 17 and have this gamer vibe. 7 months back, Joe followed them. They're stoked, big fan of his, and they almost immediately text him to let him know that they are a big fan and ask him to play Minecraft with them. Joe accepts the invite and he's in. He quickly shares his Snapchats and Xbox tag, hoping to be added on both platforms. On the first night, Coco says that they play for about 6 hours in total together on Minecraft. They say they and Joe kept at it. They grind for hours, weeks on end. Late nights, 2 to 4 a.m. chats. Innocent, right? Nope. 3 weeks in, Joe's probing. "What state do you live in? Do your parents let you travel? Do you like to drink?" Coco was honest with Joe, maybe too honest. And Joe's response? "Great, thank you for telling me." But Coco doesn't know that Joe's got a plan. Then after 4 days, he reaches out to them again, asking if he could FaceTime them. They talk about a TikTok convention. He says on FaceTime, "You and me, 1-bedroom Airbnb, I'll grab some drinks." They are packing, then Joe suddenly vanishes.
Me and went, "Hey, can I FaceTime you?" As to which we FaceTimed. And we and him talked about those TikTok conventions that used to happen once a year where you'd go to and like talk to people and the big content creators you like to follow. And he asked if I wanted to go to one with him. I agreed because that was great. I would have loved to. And he offered to buy me a room with him or like an apartment or whatever it was at the time. And I was getting ready to go. Things were great. It was wonderful. He offered to buy me alcohol like before. We never went. I'm going to specify. We never went.
But before he leaves, he gives them a quote worth remembering. "I may be a pastor, but I'm not against kids having fun." Just wow. What a way to negotiate morality.
This is the one quote I remember him talking to me about. "I may be a pastor, or I may work for God, but I'm not against kids having fun." I should have realized it right.
After ghosting Coco again for weeks, he comes back from nowhere, acting like he never left, and straight up asks Coco if he's looking to play Fortnite with him and Dylan. from the previous confession about Joe being a pedo creep. Coco agrees, and that's where they meet Dylan, which is great because Dylan is the one credited with helping them realize, but Joe's a pedo.
Afterwards, he basically ghosted me for a while. He stopped talking to me. But then one day he messaged me saying, "Hey, would you like to play Fortnite with me and Dylan?" And that's how I met Dylan, as to which I am thankful, because, well, he's the one who helped us all realize.
From that point on, it seems like Joe became too comfortable with Coco. He's starting to slip. He's now sending shirtless pictures of himself at the gym to them, texting late at night asking, "You like me, right?" Coco is creeped out, and they call him on it. And what does Joe say in response? He reminds them that he bought a game that Coco probably asked him to get, and he tried to get them to play with him. Remember, this is a response to a minor telling you that they're uncomfortable with the conversations that you're trying to initiate with them. Pathetic. Dylan tips them off. He's a groomer, and Coco's done. This prompts him to make a 3-part series where he exposes Joe Rob and puts it on his TikTok page.
After that night, I started kind of seeing John's weird behaviors. He started sending me shirtless pictures of him working out, him in bed, texting me really late at night, asking me a bunch of weird questions. And at that point, I stopped talking to him. He stopped talking to me, I stopped caring about him. So one day, he just straight up goes, "Do you not like me anymore?" So after that, I kind of got set off. I basically was like, "Well, you stopped talking to me, so I don't know." And he goes, "Well, darn, I bought that game you wanted me to. Do you want me to play sometime?" And I left him on it. I never talked to him. And then we stopped talking entirely. He stopped talking to me. And then Dylan made his video. And then I looked back on me and John's relationship, and I saw what he wanted from me all along. I was emotionally damaged. That's why it's taken me so long to make this video. It's because I couldn't grasp the fact that all he wanted was me for my body. If you are part of what happened with John, please come out with your story.
The video goes berserk as people are so shocked to find out that this was not just a one-time thing. The video rakes in millions of views, getting as much as 7 million views on TikTok, and Coco's video ends with a plea. If he got you too, speak up. TikTok's shaking. The beacon of righteousness and hope for so many is being exposed, and his empire is seeing what started as simple little cracks become a giant one with cataclysmic consequences.
Hi, I'm Melina. A lot of you guys won't know me, obviously, but I wanted to come on here, especially as Papa Gut and I Speak are going to be posting their videos, and talk a little bit about my story with Mr. J. I don't really feel comfortable saying his name, given his platform and everything.
Then the grooming saga begins to snowball. Melanie, a 16-year-old girl, drops her story. She starts with where and when she met Joe. They met over a year ago from the recording of the video. In a group chat with member ages ranging from 13 to 18 to 19, Joe's the kingpin, 28, lording over them all.
I met this creator almost a year ago through a group chat of kids from the age of 13 to around 18, maybe 1 or 2 kids who were 19. There was a very large power dynamic even then, where he obviously was not only the largest platform in the group chat, but the oldest by almost 10, 11 years, because he was 26 at the time and I was 16. Jay and I started Snapchatting because I was like, oh, he's cool, and we started talking, and then a lot of you guys will remember when there was the Papa Gut and other situations with Jay where he was called out, and Jay and I had been on a call when that whole thing was very large, and he was essentially trauma dumping onto me to try to kind of keep me in what I think was his grasp.
Attempting to trauma bond with a 16-year-old is pure evil manipulation. From the analysis so far, we can clearly see that Joe is doing everything he does with careful and precise calculation. This is obviously not something that happened by chance. He didn't just find himself in a group with minors, he probably curated the group by himself. On a Zoom call with his group members, Melanie reveals that he asked them to call him hot. What a narcissistic douche. She also adds that he regularly made sexual innuendos to the members of the group or himself, sometimes making them all uncomfortable.
Alongside that, he would then make comments and Zooms with a lot of the other kids who had experienced this, making innuendos about certain people or just himself, and trying to get us to call him hot, and just a lot of other scary, uncomfortable things.
Smirking on Zoom calls, Melanie says he promised them heaven and earth, from celebrity parties to Airbnbs, hot tubs, alcohol, and trips. Literally every bad thing one could use to tempt a child was offered. He trauma dumps to keep her close, gaslights her to make sure she doubts the others in the group, as he also did with Dylan, telling her that everyone hates him and that she was his rock. What a loser.
Alongside that, he'd also make promises about getting Airbnbs and meeting up with us, and alongside that, he promised alcohol and hot tubs, and he made me believe that like the whole group was horrible people who hated him and I, and it was really just not good. These are just my experiences.
But that's still not the end of this drama, as another kid who chose to stay anonymous came forward and said he went through the same deal at the hands of Joe Robb. That's what, 4 victims have come out to expose Joe Robb as the fraudulent child groomer that he was.
I wasn't going to make this video about Joro, but a lot of stuff has come up in the past couple days that I feel like I almost have to. It's gotten to the point where so many people are DMing us and telling us stories about their experiences with Joro too, so I feel like I want to help back those up and be able to have this guy finally.
Again, we see this same order of events. Joe Robb followed him while he was still at 10K, which Joe is close to 1 million followers already. Conversations between the two is not so frequent. They occasionally texted, duetted, and commented on each other's content, and this guy thought he was friends with Joe Robb. I mean, who wouldn't? Big-time influencer being nice enough to follow you first, replies to your DMs quickly, and gives you attention? You have to understand that these kids looked up to Joe, and he used that to his advantage. He knew that having these kids that saw him as an idol in their heads, he would be able to get away with a thing or two because they'll never assume that he was actually looking to sexually exploit them. Back to the last victim that made a video, he also reveals that Joe wished him a birthday. He's very mindful of birthdays. Did you notice that too? Then a little while after that, he came out to this user personally before he did so on TikTok. Wow, imagine the pressure and expectations he just put on this boy. But he says he saw that as a sign of trust, and he in no return trusted Joe. Then, as expected, Joe uses that trust leverage to start to exploit the situation to his advantage. Joe sends him things that he didn't want to see, but he felt like he couldn't reject or say no. Joe strikes again.
And Joro, because it is quite not safe for work, and TikTok will immediately take it down. But I'll try and give as much information as I can without this getting taken down. So Joro followed me when I didn't have a lot of followers, and he had around, I think, 300 to 400K. I would go check to get the exact time and numbers that he did have, but unfortunately he's deactivated all 3 of his accounts on social media, so I can't see the DMs. We didn't talk too much, we DM'd and commented on each other's stuff, sometimes duetted each other, and I thought we were friends. Then 2 days before my birthday, he DMs me and asked me for my Snapchat. And around that time was the time where he started to actually get pretty big on TikTok. So of course I added him because I looked up to the guy and he was posting the same stuff as me, and he was doing really well on TikTok. And then my birthday came around and he wished me a happy birthday. And then a little bit after that is when he came out to me personally before he actually came out on TikTok. And so I saw that as a sign of trust, and so I really trusted the guy. And then he had misused that trust and tried to get me to do things and was sending me things that I didn't want. And I felt like I couldn't say no because, I don't know, I felt like I trusted him, and then I felt bad for him because of all the shit he was getting on TikTok and all the hate.
4 victims, 1 pattern. Isolation, promises, power plays. Juicy? It's rancid. By August 2023, the teenagers who had been individually communicating with Joe began to connect and share their experiences. A Google Doc containing screenshots of their conversations with Joe, as well as their timeline of events, began circulating on TikTok. The document included accounts from Dylan, Coco, Melania, Anan, and others, and it quickly became clear that Joe had been using a similar pattern of behavior with all of them. He would offer to pay for one-bedroom Airbnbs, buy them alcohol, and then gaslight them into believing that they were the ones at fault. The document exposes Joe's predatory playbook, and the video quickly amassed over 20 million views. Fans were outraged by Joe's behavior and began calling for him to be deplatformed. Some even went so far as to label him a monster. Amidst the uproar, a popular content creator known as Papa Gut, who had been critical of Joe in the past, received a DM from an anonymous account. The person claimed that she had been 14 years old when she ran a fan page for Joe, and that he had contacted her on Snapchat and told her not to tell anyone that he reached out to her. Then the pics, underwear selfies, with captions that are quite disgusting to read aloud, like saying, "These trunks look so good, handcuff you to my bed." She's got screenshots, 4 of them, vile proof that he didn't even ask her age. He called her baby and begged for her to call him daddy. 14! This isn't just hypocrisy, it's a horror show. TikTok's boiling and Joe's halo is now ash, but it's not over. His offline life's about to make this 1,000 times worse. Church gigs, Boy Scouts, access to kids IRL. What's he been doing off-screen? Well, folks, as we know, he was a finance manager at a church. After all these allegations were out in the open, users took it upon themselves to inform the church about who exactly they had working for them and with the kids there. One very notable person to make this effort was Papa Gut. He claims to have called the church personally and informed them adequately about the recent happenings and doings of Joe Robb that had just come to light in public. And he says that he was met with a short conversation ending response, "Okay, thank you." And after that, the line beeped and the call ended. Now, this interaction would lead one into thinking that the church was probably trying to cover one of their own and hide him. But something surprising happened. Just a few days after Papa Gut made that call to the church, we noticed that John Robert Bell's picture profile had been taken off the church website. Yeah. Now it seems like the people won in this case against John. He lost his TikTok influence, meaning he could no longer lure in kids who were grinding the TikTok algorithm. He also lost his primary job at the church, meaning that the parents and kids there now have one less groomer and predator to worry about. Same scenario with the Boy Scouts. John quickly became a social outcast. Nobody hears from him for long periods. No new accounts pop up. All the dead stay dead. Traumatized kids are trying to heal and move on. Things seem like they've gone back to normal. But Joe doesn't give up the games there. Determined to get a fresh start, Joe Robb goes on to change his name, and this story is corroborated by a YouTuber who did some extra digging on Joe Robb to find out how things ended with him. Now, does this look like the actions of an innocent man? The answer is simply no. It's only hope that he learns his lesson from this encounter and does better for himself and for society. Viewers, that's the twisted tale of Joe Robb, John Robert Bell, TikTok's fallen angel. From a pedestal of 1.5 million followers, preaching consent and feminist vibes, to a name change fugitive slinking away from the wreckage he left behind, all in under a year. We've climbed the peak of his rise, slogged through the muck of his predatory schemes, and watched him crash into oblivion. It's not just a story, it's a punch to the gut. A hypocrisy so rancid it sticks with you. Dylan, Coco, Melania, that brave 14-year-old with the screenshots, they're the real MVPs here, stepping up when it hurts most, risking everything to expose a monster. Joe, he's the spineless creep who bolted, leaving a trail of shattered trust and unanswered questions. This isn't some TikTok tea to sip and forget, it's a full-on warning shot. Online spaces are a jungle, and not every friendly face is what it seems. Joe didn't just groom kids, he weaponized his platform, his pastor cred, his safe space shtick to reel them in. Airbnbs with teens, shirtless pics, call me daddy. It's a predator's playbook executed with a smirk. When the truth hit, TikTok didn't flinch. 20 million views, a Google Doc of doom, a community that said, not on our watch. But Joe, no accountability, no I messed up, just a deleted account and a new name. That's not a man, that's a ghost running from his own shadow. And those kids he hurt, they're still piecing themselves back together. No closure, no sorry. The church that cut him loose, the fans who worshipped him, they're left wondering too, how'd we miss this? How'd he play us for so long? This is bigger than Joe Rob. TikTok is a beast, wholesome 1 minute, wicked the next. For every cute dog vid, there's a creep lurking, scrolling, plotting. Joe's gone, deplatformed, disgraced, but his echo sticks around. Where is he now? New name, new gig, maybe eyeing his next target? Or sweating in some basement, praying no one knocks? We'll never know, and that's the sting. The app moves on. New dances, new drama, but the lesson's carved in stone. Trust is a gamble, and the stakes are high. Keep your eyes open, your guard up, because the next Joe could be one follow away.